Welcome to the deep dive. Today we are plunging into the FLR network. Ticker is FLR for those following along.
Right. And this is a really interesting one. It's a layer 1 blockchain, sure, but it's really been engineered to solve this huge problem in crypto-secure data access. Interoperability.
Yeah, it's not just another EVM-compatible chain trying to be the next Ethereum.
No, not at all. FLR pitches itself as a decentralized data layer.
Yeah.
The token, FLR, it isn't just for gas. It's the entire engine for their Oracle system.
So utility, governance, collateral, it's all baked in.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The token's value is sort of directly tied to how well it provides that external data.
And that's our mission today. It's a bit complex because we have to navigate first the really stormy waters of their token distribution. 5.01, yeah.
Right.
The governance debate that just redefined the rules for all the early holders. But then we also have to get under the hood and understand the tech.
The FLR Time Series Oracle, the FTSO, and the FLR Data Connector, the FDC.
Mm-hmm. Because you really can't understand the drama without understanding the engineering. They're completely linked.
100%. And to get the drama, you need the starting point.
Yeah.
When FLR first launched at Genesis, the FLR team controlled everything.
100% of the network.
Yeah. And they had this foundational requirement that they had to give up that control, get their own share below 33% before they could even start the initial 15% distribution.
So that initial centralization, that kind of set the stage for everything that came later.
It really did.
Okay, that context is crucial. So let's jump straight into the controversy. The FLR distribution drama. If you were an early XRP holder from that 2020 snapshot, you had a very clear idea of what to expect.
Oh, yeah. The original promise was simple. It was appealingly passive. 15% of your total FLR dropped right into your wallet immediately.
And the rest?
The other 85%, the big chunk, that was supposed to just follow in these monthly drops, about 3% a month until you got everything, all delivered to the address you registered.
So a pure airdrop. Set it and forget it. No action needed on your part.
Correct. But then the crypto landscape changed a lot. And the team introduced FIP 0101.
And the stated goal for this change was pretty pragmatic, right? They were worried about exchanges failing.
Exactly. You know, if you held your XRP on, say, Celsius or another exchange with a snapshot, and that exchange collapsed during the distribution window,
you'd lose the rest of your airdrop, that 85%.
Gone. So they wanted to address that risk.
But the solution they came up with was a fundamental rule change, and this is where it all just exploded.
It was a massive, massive shift. To get that remaining 85%, we're talking about, 24.2 billion FLR tokens over 36 months? You now had this mandatory requirement.
You had a job to do.
A job, yeah. You had to wrap your initial 15% FLR into something called WFLR and then delegate that to signal providers.
So wrapping became the only way, the proxy for mandatory network participation.
That's the perfect way to put it.
But what was the justification? I mean, why force people to do this? It turns a passive thing into an active chore.
The justification was all about network utility. The argument was that the future value of FLR depends entirely on a strong, decentralized Oracle system, the FTSO.
And that system is secured by delegation.
Right. So by tying the airdrop to delegation, they guaranteed this widespread, immediate economic buy-in to the network's core security.
Okay, but here's the thing that's a bit strange to me. This was a governance proposal, voted on by the community. The FLR team couldn't even use their tokens to vote.
Mm-hmm.
And it passed with, 93.78% of the vote? That's overwhelming. So if the consensus was that high, why was the opposition so loud, so angry?
That is a fantastic question, and it really highlights the difference between the most active, engaged participants who voted and, maybe a silent majority.
Or a vocal minority.
Or a very vocal minority. If you were already planning to wrap and delegate, you loved FIP 0.01. It boosted your monthly rewards. But if you were more risk-averse or just a passive holder, the opposition was incredibly charged.
So what were their main complaints? What were the sticking points?
The first one is serious. It's the tax burden. Under the original passive airdrop, a lot of jurisdictions might just treat that as a capital asset, maybe simpler taxes.
But forcing delegation.
That generates continuous income, rewards. And that completely changes the tax situation. It potentially creates this ongoing income tax obligation in some countries.
So they felt like they were being forced into a business they never signed up for just to get property that was already promised to them.
Precisely. Which leads right into the second big complaint, the the hostage claim.
They felt like their tokens were being held for ransom.
That's the language they used.
Yeah.
Critics were saying, I wanted to sell my first 15% to take some profit to de-risk. But if you sold that initial drop, you forfeited the entire remaining 85%. One source we read, they described it as having their property ransomed by a sort of kidnapper. I mean, that's heavy emotional language.
It really is, and it shows this deep distrust that came from changing the rules. And the irony is, they ended up penalizing the most security-conscious people.
The ones using self-custody.
Right, the ones who did it right. And the stated goal was to protect the people who, kind of foolishly, kept their XRP on centralized exchanges.
It's a classic crypto trade-off, isn't it? Network security through decentralization versus an individual's freedom to do what they want with their property.
And the network chose security.
They forced engagement. But this decision, as contentious as it was, it's also the foundation for why FLR started attracting all this institutional interest later on.
We'll get to that. But first, let's get technical. Why did they need a separate token, this WFLR? And what exactly is delegation securing?
The wrapping part is a technical necessity. FLR is an EVM chain. FLR is the native token you need for gas. But for programmable stuff, like delegation or governance, you need an ERC20 token standard. WFLR is just that. It's an ERC20 token minted one-to-one with FLR that lets smart contracts do their thing.
And the service it supports is the FTSO, the FLR Time Series Oracle. This is the heart of FLR's data utility.
It's absolutely critical. The FTSO provides these decentralized, super reliable price feeds for crypto, commodities, stocks, you name it, directly on chain. And its security is tied to the economic security of the whole blockchain.
Okay, so how does it stop a bad actor from just submitting a fake price? That's the classic Oracle problem.
Right. And the mechanism is actually pretty elegant. It's basically a game, a Schelling point game, played by about 100 independent data providers.
How does it work?
They use a commit and reveal scheme. Providers secretly commit their price estimate, then they all reveal it publicly at the same time. The network then just computes the median price from all the submissions.
And the rewards, how do you incentivize them to be accurate?
Rewards are only paid to the honest ones. Specifically, only providers whose estimates fall within what's called the interquartile range, the IQR, get rewarded.
Okay, hold on. Interquartile range.
Yeah.
That sounds like something I failed in a statistics class. Can you break that down for us?
Absolutely. Think of it this way. Imagine you have 100 people on a football field, all guessing where a hidden treasure is.
Okay.
Instead of just taking the average guess, the network throws out the 25 worst guesses on one side and the 25 worst guesses on the other.
So you're left with the middle 50%.
Exactly. That central cluster of guesses is the IQR. If your estimate lands in that tight central group, you get rewarded with new tokens. It means the best reward goes to the provider who gets closest to the true consensus price.
That's a really powerful incentive for honesty. And I hear FTSO v2 is fast, too.
Incredibly fast. It's what they call block latency feeds. The price updates with every single new block.
Which is about every 1.8 seconds.
Yeah, that's essential for any kind of serious DeFi. And the system's also protected from attacks with a stake-weighted verifiably random function, a VRF, which makes it basically impossible for providers to collude.
So the FTSO handles price data, but FLR's whole mission is bigger than that, right? They want to connect everything. That's where the second piece comes in, the FLR data connector,
Right.
the FDC.
That's right. The FDC, or the State Connector Oracle, is the general purpose gateway.
Right.
If FTSO does time series data like prices, the FDC lets smart contracts securely access external state.
From other blockchains and the internet itself.
On the internet, yes.
So how does it know the data is real? I mean, if I pull a sports score from ESPN, how does my smart contract know that it hasn't been messed with?
It uses this sophisticated process, the Request Commit Reveal Protocol, RCR, along with something called the branching protocol. Yeah, think of it like getting a high-stakes document notarized. You request the data, the providers commit to it cryptographically, and then they reveal the actual data. The FDC needs over 50% consensus from its providers to attest that the data is true.
And what kind of data can it pull in?
The scope is just huge. It can handle transaction details from EVM chains like Ethereum, but also from non-EVM chains like Bitcoin, Doge, or XRP. But the real game changer is what they call the JSON EVM attestation type.
JSON-AP. That sounds like the bridge to Web 2.
It is 100% the bridge to Web 2. It lets the FDC securely fetch and process basically any data that's structured in JSON format, which is the standard for almost every web API out there.
So a weather report, shipping container status, a database record.
All of it. It can pull that data, verify it, and make it trustlessly usable on-chain. It essentially turns FLR into a fully programmable Web 2 bridge.
That is an immense capability. It moves this whole conversation beyond just crypto-native stuff.
And when you connect that infrastructure back to the mandatory participation that FIP.01 forced, you start to see the bigger strategy here.
Okay, let's talk about the money. FIP.01 didn't just change the distribution, it also tweaked the tokenomics, the inflation schedule.
Yeah, it tightened it up a lot. Before, inflation was based on the total fully diluted supply, which is a massive number.
Yeah.
FIP.01 changed it to be based on the available supply, and it's capped at 5 billion FLR per year.
And it steps down over time.
Right. 10% in year one, 7% in year two, and then it settles at 5% forever after that.
And how that inflation is distributed is the ultimate proof of the FIP.01 mandate, isn't it?
It's the ultimate justification. The inflation is highly functional. 70% of it goes straight to the FTSO data providers.
Wow, 70%.
70%. Then 20 to validators, 10 to state connector providers. By pumping 70% of all new tokens into the FTSO, they make sure that the delegates, the people forced to wrap their tokens, are heavily incentivized to keep securing those Oracle feeds.
The money funds the security.
Directly.
And that security, built on this forced engagement, seems to be paying off. I mean, looking at the February 2025 data, adoption is accelerating.
The numbers are undeniable. FLR's total value locked, its TVL, just passed $80 million. That is a 410% increase from just a year ago.
That's not slow growth. That's an explosion.
It's acceleration. And daily transactions are almost at 500,000. That shows real user activity, not just capital sitting around.
And what's really interesting is the type of capital that's driving this. It's not just meme coins.
No, it's primarily high-grade assets. Real-world assets, RWAs, and liquid staking make up over 56% of the TVL.
You see it in the protocols like Clearpool, T-Pool.
Yeah, Clearpool, which is all about on-chain treasury yield, that's over 30% of the TVL by itself. It shows a clear preference for products that need a high degree of trust and reliability, exactly what the FTSO provides.
Which brings us to the biggest validation yet, institutional adoption, specifically FLR becoming this institutional-grade framework for XRP.
This is the massive so what moment. FLR built out an institutional XRP5 framework, XRP DeFi. It's designed to give a compliant, non-custodial way to get yield on assets like XRP, which usually just sits there in a corporate treasury doing nothing.
And that security and compliance is why actual public companies are getting involved?
Precisely. You have Vivo Power, which is listed on NASDAQ, committing $100 million in XRP to this framework.
$100 million.
And Everything Blockchain Inc., EBZT, with an initial $10 million. These are not crypto funds. These are regulated public companies.
So why FLR? Why is it the on-ramp for programmable XRP?
Because of everything we just discussed. When you're dealing with the corporate balance sheet, you need absolute verifiable trust. You need to know the price feeds are bulletproof and the smart contracts won't fail. The FTSO provides that.
So walk us through it. How does a company like Vivo Power actually use FLR to make their XRP productive?
They use FLR's facet system. It's a trustless bridge. The institution converts its native XRP into FXRP, a wrapped version that lives on the FLR blockchain.
And because it's now a FLR asset,
it can be put to work, allocated into lending, staking, RWA protocols on the network to generate yield.
So Facets is that critical interoperability layer.
It is. It uses the state connector oracle to verify the asset on the XRP ledger and then trustlessly wraps it onto FLR. The whole system is built to minimize risk and maximize compliance.
Which is exactly what institutions need.
It's what they demand. And the fact that FIP.01 forced such a wide distribution of delegation power means that the network security they rely on is incredibly decentralized and resilient. The controversial distribution, in the end, actually served the institutional need for security.
That brings the whole story full circle. the aggressive move to mandate participation. It wasn't just to pump the price. It was a foundational choice to make the FTSO as decentralized and secure as possible.
Which is the exact feature that makes a company comfortable committing $100 million.
They traded short-term retail happiness for long-term institutional security.
That's the key takeaway.
So, to wrap up our deep dive on FLR, we've seen a really rocky start with that FIT.01 change. But despite the outcry, it did successfully plug users directly into the network's core utility, the oracles.
And that core utility is seriously robust. You've got the FTSO with its super fast game theory secured price feeds, and then the FTC, the state connector, which can securely verify data from anywhere.
And that foundation is now fueling real DeFi growth and attracting huge institutional players, making FLR this go-to layer for RWAs and especially for XRP-Fi.
Yep.
So as we close, let's leave you with the full weight of that FDC capability. FLR's ability to attest to data isn't just about crypto prices. We talked about the JSON-AP attestation type. That means it can trustlessly fetch and process, well, any Web2 data is shipping manifest, an insurance claim, a government database, which raises a really powerful question for you to think about. If a smart contract can now securely access and verify any piece of data from the real world, how does that fundamentally change the kinds of things we can build on-chain, and which non-financial traditional Web2 systems might be the very first to be replaced by a trustless FLR application?
The revolution isn't just about making crypto prices better. It's about bringing verifiable truth from the outside world on-chain. That's the next frontier.